Welcome to Making the Impossible Inevitable podcast. This show is for those who see progress as a calling, not just a choice. Hosted by former Navy SEAL and transformational guide Curt Cronin, each episode explores the mindset, strategies, and stories of extraordinary leaders who've turned the impossible into reality. These episodes are more than just conversations. They're a challenge to you to expand your capacity, shatter inner limitations, and lead with unshakable purpose. Together, let's make the impossible inevitable.
What if the very thing we label impossible is simply the part of us we haven't remembered yet? In this episode, I sit down with someone who's helped me to remember again and again. Stefan Beiten has been one of my closest friends and trusted mirrors for over 15 years. We met on a shared quest for more meaning, more depth, more presence, and over the years has become one of the very few people I turn to when the stakes are high and the path is unclear. I've watched him transmute grief into growth, complexity into clarity, and fear into profound flow. This man lives what most of us only dare to theorize. In this conversation, we get real. Stefan opens up about the deep personal losses that cracked his model of success and how those cracks became the space for something far more powerful, play. Not the superficial kind, but the state of childlike presence where magic actually happens, the place where ideas land, teams unite, and the impossible becomes inevitable. We talk about what it means to lead from coherence, about the twin energies we all carry, the playful creative and the fearful entitled shadow, and how the space between impulse and response, that 0.4 seconds, can be the difference between growth and self-destruction, between authoring your life or running someone else's script. He also shares the untold story behind the creation of planet Earth, how a small team from Germany said yes to an impossible invitation from the BBC and ended up creating a global phenomenon that reminded people what it feels like to come home to themselves. But this isn't just about Stefan's story. It's about yours and ours, and about the operating system for humanity that he and we are working to rewrite. If you've ever felt like you've lost your play, your presence, or your power, this conversation will call it back. Welcome to Making the Impossible Inevitable. Good morning and an early morning from Maui for today's podcast episode with Stefan Beiten. Stefan's been a dear friend of mine for 15 years now. I think, Stefan, 16 years if I think about that. In 2009, when we were both on a seeking quest and we met through the Platinum Partnership, he's become a key part of my mastermind group that I probably would have made 4 or 5 impossible to inevitable transitions without, and has some unparalleled stories that I can't wait for him to unpack with you today. So, Stefan, please let us know. Tell me something that's been impossible for you that you converted to inevitable, and what was that process like?
Curt, I've been looking forward to having this podcast with you, and at the same time, been shitting my pants because being in a deep conversation with you is always opening doors to spaces, not only to a space, but spaces that are far from the ordinary. Hence the title of your podcast, and hence your question. I'm still processing actually what I just heard when I today listened to your previous podcast with Jordan Hall. At its core, the ability to love and be loved. And it doesn't matter to me how you approach that, how you open that door to that deepest space, the door to the religious door, the psychological, personal. Doesn't matter how, or a profound aha moment in life, or the famous scene described by Viktor Frankl when he found the meaning of life in Auschwitz. So that for me was the impossible in a way that I couldn't even describe it, because it was like a blind trying to describe colors. Is that a starting point?
And yet we begin again.
And yeah, we begin again. Exactly.
And so you have so many personal stories you've shared with me of things that were seemingly impossible to me, and I watched you, convert them into inevitability with clarity and simplicity. Is there one specific that you think would be useful for the audience to see, hear, and understand?
One thing I've never heard about myself is that I could express anything with simplicity. Actually, that is something that I'm probably going to be working for the rest of my life.
Well, the execution was in simplicity. Yes, the models you create are often sophisticated and complex.
Yes,
but the deftness that you move through the space and extraordinary and powerful.
well, looking back, and I keep on making a simple observation of myself, of both where my greatest successes were coming from and what state I was in, what level of awareness I had, and at the same time, what level of awareness I did not have. So both what was the light and the dark side of that state. And interesting for me, it was my biggest power, the superpower, as the playful me, to be in that state of the playful 5 or 10-year-old that wouldn't care less about all the things that all of a sudden a few years later we deem to be the most important stuff, basically. Being in the moment, being with others, being in a field of coherence and flow, and just not caring about tomorrow or the past or what others say. Just the moment, be in full presence. Whenever I was able to translate that state, that approach to people, with that kind of communication, both in words but more so energetically, boy, it's magical. Magic happens. And at the same time, that's also exactly the space of, or let me put it this way, that state comes with an ugly twin brother, at least in me. It's the one of the fearful, being not enough, thereby almost rageful me. That is then the equivalent of the entitled kid that throws a tantrum on the supermarket floor and says, "Where's my ice cream?" And not being able to observe.
Would that twin be the embodiment of, clearly from that statement of, from the petulant, rage-induced child, I'll say things would be impossible. And when you switch into your playful, natural flow state, that's when things become inevitable. Is that the two states, the twins, as you would?
Absolutely. And the more I look back, is the ability to observe yourself, the quality of the awareness, to observe oneself in either that state or the other, has been key to just for me to finally start growing up. I would never call myself a grown up, but at least on a continuous journey of growing up. And that is key. It goes as far as, I'm not even sure if we can truly change, if that is really possible. But taking this old yoga wisdom that basically says, and I'm sure I'm doing the Upanishads here a huge disfavor in my Western understanding of that, that life happens in the space between, that space between impulse and reaction. And you, as a former Navy SEAL, know that very well. It's a 0.4 seconds. And you, when you and your whole team work in unison, 0.4 seconds is more than the difference between life and death. And that goes for every single moment. So the ability to observe myself in the moment I have an impulse, an emotion, an energy motion, wherever it comes from. Does it come from a narrative? Does it come from epigenetics, from DNA, from unconditional, just a projection? Doesn't matter. Something builds up in my body. And then something in me decides to go either into the positive, the playful, or the opposite. Can I develop enough awareness to make that decision, to observe myself that this is happening, and just through observation be able to make a decision to go left or right? That is the difference between a fulfilled and an unfulfilled life. Either I'm constantly under remote control, or I'm a true author.
Well, you just shattered my model where I thought, in general, things are impossible for us, and we evolve into a state that allows it to happen. But I think you've just revolutionized the perspective of, we start in a natural flow state of play. We can get distracted and go into fear, and then we can get back to that natural place. And you and I share a passion for entertainment, because to me, play is our ultimate state of learning, because it's the only state that, hey, if something goes wrong in play, you don't die, right? So it's the ultimate path for unconstrained learning without consequence. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit, because to me this seemed completely impossible at the time. How you revolutionized, really helped lead the movement with both social media and conservation through film. One of my favorites, Planet Earth.
Yeah. Well, that state of play to start with, and with Planet Earth, when we started the project and started that, we're invited to that joint venture with the BBC, which we were a small German media company, and they invited us to co-create their crown jewels with them, which was unheard of.
How'd you get the room? How did you get interested in this project?
I just want to say, until today, I cannot tell you what on earth made them do that. I do believe it was exactly that state of playfulness. They were stuck. They were stuck in the gigantic machinery of them, so where the machine fights the machine constantly. And income, we would say, oh, it's all easy. Somehow we make this possible, and we have an idea. And then went like, huh? And then luckily they had a new CEO, was the BBC Worldwide, and they had a new CEO that came from my former world, the investment banking world. And he simply said, okay, I'm making a suggestion. You take 100% of the risk and we share 50-50. If you make that possible, you're in. And I said, where can I sign? Having no bloody idea how on earth I would ever make this possible, because they had a budget that was 50 times over the average budget in that field of the industry at that time. So, of course, everybody that heard of the deal went like, yeah, you guys, you're on the death row and you don't even know it. So that's how originally it happened. And it did happen from that state of absolute playfulness, which created absolute confidence. And interestingly, throughout that project, we never stopped to do that from that state. Somehow, there was also something about that project that allowed, that created that space continuously, despite all the problems, having 60 teams worldwide, years-long production, and then you create 10,000 hours of footage, and you have to boil it down to 11 hours, and then finally to 90 minutes of a movie. and you need security guards before the cutting room's door, because how are you you have 60 of the best teams in the world and you're gonna cut their footage? Better run. Because those guys are the guys that also wrestle with polar bears. So but it all worked out. It's absolutely fascinating. And until today, somehow something that was embedded, that was created, and was not just the fact that with that money we could take shots that no one else has ever taken. It was more the narrative and a certain story creation and a statement within that, and for which the time has come. So everyone who's ever seen it that I ever met, and I've met thousands of people worldwide and from all cultures, and they all describe the same thing, that they could describe to me the moment and what they felt when they first saw it. And it took us years to kind of re-engineer what actually happened, because we didn't know. We just did.
Well, that's what we're here for. Tell us, what was that calling? What was the tug that continued to pull you forth? What was that allowed you to run distributed teams across 60 different remote locations? If you're looking back on it now, it's usually only with the clarity of reflection that we can say, oh, here was the magic, right? Here was, what was that chutzpah? What was the magical element that allowed this team to come together? Yeah. I've experienced it in the SEALs, where they came together, and team together when achieves more, right? Where now the individual subordinates themselves, and all of a sudden the collective, now you're more individual than ever, because the superpowers of the individual become the superpower of the collective. And so to me, what you're expressing is exactly that. And it's sometimes possible on a combat operation for 15 minutes, for 30 minutes, for maybe 4 to 12 hours, to have that sustained state for, I'm guessing, a period of years as you went through that process. And with remote teams that didn't actually get into the coherent field with the creative team, now they're creating their own. So talking about distributed flow and what the mission statement was, what the calling was, what allowed, or was it nature itself? You've talked about some of your key characters, the polar bear, that their actions and their observation of life became a crucial aspect.
You just described it beautifully. That's exactly it. First of all, if you just look at the story structure, especially of the movie, you basically had 3 heroes' journeys woven within one gigantic hero's journey. And that was a representative of the greatest myths of mankind, and the myth of every single human being on this planet. That we're all here to start the work. At the center, we'll never finish it. We're all here to get on a journey, but that doesn't mean we'll ever finish it. It is about continuing forward and not being alone on it. Because as a collective, we are more as an individual than the sum of the collective. And I never forget I was in the Andes, 3,000 meter high, at a bar, and there were Indios looking at a television screen. I wondered, so no one was talking. And lo and behold, Planet Earth was on. And then I talked to them and said, I want to know, so Indios, they've never been anywhere else. Describe back to me, what did you just see? What did you feel? And one of them said, this to me, as a Indio but Catholic, Spanish, educated, in an Indio Christian religion mix, and he said, that to me is religion. And I found that profound. What do you mean by religion? And the way he described it, it came to me, Oh, that is the original word. The meaning of the Latin meaning of the word religion it is basically coming home. It is that feeling I can now reconnect with what is true. And that's what we've seen all over the world. And with events, the most beautiful ones I remember were the open air premieres in old European cities in Italy and in Spain, where you had basically on a square of an ancient European city, 4,000 people there. And after the movie finished, there was a quietness. Not unlike any action movies where then there's turmoil and blah blah blah. There's kind of like a carnival or there's something happening. There's a party happening. Every time that the movie was over, it was quietness, and that was what the Inuit described as his religious moment. It was a coming home to oneself, a complete reconnection with himself, and that's what we saw with all the participants or all the people that watched it. Something happened, and I can only describe it with a quote of Viktor Frankl. It's that feeling of aliveness, that feeling I found my why. This is how it feels, how simply life feels, and being in it, and not being somewhere on the run, trying to find something in utopia in the tomorrow, but in the here and now, and being fully connected with what it means to be alive, what it means to be human, what it means to be a father, a son, a brother, a friend.
Well, so tell me about that moment. Well, you've shared with me, but tell everyone else about the first premiere. Right, you've been working on this thing for years, making all the hard decisions to cut it.
Well, luckily let me put it this way, had we, as a small team, been responsible for the whole production, we would have screwed up royally. It was lucky to have the most experienced partner when it came to production logistics on the planet for this, the BBC. They knew what they were doing, and they had it all worked out. Our job was to be the kind of the quick, the fast cruiser that can cruise around a airship carrier and and poach them to, hey, what about this? What about that? What about this? And oh, you can get there fast enough. Let me cruise around. Let me go to that island and come back with whatever you need. And so, kind of put the icing on the cake. Apart from doing all the financing and the worldwide distribution and all of that stuff, but logistically, that is when there's nothing coming magically together unless you also know how to put it together with very profound professional craftsmanship, organization, and processes. So that is where those two realms really have to meet all the time.
So in my words, from combat, the dynamics of ordination, right? You became the creative spark. You were in charge until like the helicopter pilots were as you flew toward target. Then as you land, the reconnaissance team takes over. And then as you get within 100 meters, the breachers take over, and then the assaulters. And so each person did what's theirs to do in that moment and allowed and surrendered the ring the moment it wasn't theirs to do. And allowed the collective to now thrive.
That's exactly it. And it was like you having the Navy behind you, but all they can do is just wait outside and see, well, let's see what what those guys are doing on the ground. But the combination of both, the huge apparatus and the incredible force of creative, coherent, fully trusting band of brothers, that makes the impossible inevitable.
When you've shared with me, in your youth, that was easy, right? You didn't know things could be hard, and so you stayed in that playful state. can you tell me what it was like to lose that state? Because then you've expressed to me, then it got to the point where, okay, now I didn't realize I'm now in a state of control. If you look back, what happened that you lost that state of youthful play and aliveness? And can you talk through what happened then?
Yeah, that is actually there were two events in my life. One was the death of my sister. That and interestingly, the way I compensated that or worked through that was by basically going into cognitive dissonance, not feeling. And interestingly, although I told you that my natural state is the playful state, and that's my field of also my field of biggest strength, but I'm also where I came from was a high achiever, high expert world. So basically, my belief system was achieve, don't ask questions, don't feel, go forward, everything else will fall into place.
And high achievement, as I understand, your father was one of the most preeminent lawyers at preeminent law firms in Germany. So you'd followed in that path where a lawyer, and so rules, order. Stefan and I have a great running conversation about how does a German build something versus an American. An American, I build it, I crash it. I build it, I crash it. Stefan, think, plan, execute. So just to frame when he says super achiever, yes, we mean logic based achiever, yes.
Very logic, and of course, everything outside what's measurable and logically thinkable doesn't exist. That's that'd be the space for religion, esoteric, or therapy. So that's the world I grew up in. Highly rational, Homo economicus, the Cartesian thinking model of the world. What I did not notice that although I come on the outset from a very liberal, cosmopolitan, art-loving, good food-loving, traveling European family of the 70s and 80s, I did not notice how little love there was and how incapable the whole family was of accessing higher states of consciousness, connecting with the infinite wisdom of the universe, connecting with the divine, independent of what religious affiliation someone was in. It was completely cut off. And while I was basically just mirroring both my parents and their childhood, they went through the atrocities of the Second World War, going through terrible things. So they had to shut off their ability to feel, and that was translated to the next generation, who could not deal with that or cope with it. Was my sister, who was the sensitive one, who chose to walk away from this construct that was called family. And of course, I could not understand it. My parents had no way of coping with that or understanding it, or especially not feeling it. And years later, over that lack of love, that feeling of abandonment. I'm sorry, I have a slight cold. My sister actually was almost gone for 10 years. She came back and was in chronic depressions that then developed into a form of schizophrenia and ended in suicide. That ended the family as I knew it. It also ended my belief system without me consciously knowing that just following the narrative that I was born into is enough. So that was the answer to your question. When was the first time that my belief system of ever achieving is the one? When did that change?
And so you and I love models. So to me, what you described in the unbelievable run up into Deep Blue was the model of the pre-tragic, right? The achievement model where everything works. You just do the work and it works out, and you're in a state of play and it always works out. And then there's the tragic, the moment something occurs that you never could have expected, which is what often leads us into an impossible space. It doesn't fit the models that we were born into. It doesn't fit the models that what we expected life to be, the environment to be, the situation to be. And so I know from our personal conversations, that was one of the deepest challenges. And if you said aliveness is your peak state, the sense of death, right? That like complete lack of aliveness, complete lack of creation, and now an irrevocable act that she's committed. And so how did you traverse that? I know I've had my deepest state of loss, were it not for my wife and my mentor, I wouldn't have come back from that. And that's, to me, I love this community because of the SEALs, and I love the community because of the awareness of others that allowed me to, or that pulled me up and out, of a state that I don't know I would have made it out in any other way when the extortion 17 helicopter crash occurred. I didn't even know how lost I was, until they pulled me out. And so how did you go through that process, and how did you don't know at the time, but looking back, what were the key inflection points if someone's in a state where they've just hit the tragic? Because the hardest thing in life is none of the tools we need to get out of the tragic state are relevant until the moment we're there. And then in the moment we're there, if you don't have them, then you have to hope that there are humans to help you. And so that's part of the mission today, is can we convey that other humans have been in those situations, and allows us to then move through them even when it feels impossible. So what were those keys as you reflect back that allowed you to come back from the brink?
Well, interestingly, I did. Now I would say I still didn't read the memo. I didn't read it, didn't get it. So I said, all right, this is. I actually went even into a judgmental mode, saying, oh, this was done to me and to my family, and so I was even in blaming mode. And something shifted. I went even further into achiever, into doing what I knew I was good in.
So I'm in pain. I'm going to double, triple, quadruple down on everything that I
double,
have done.
Tripled,
The model will work. I just have not worked the model enough. The pre-tragic, and that's the attachment. That attachment to the pre-tragic. That okay, Navy SEALs is, hey, if when in doubt, overload. If 1 pound in charge works, 5 pounds will work even better. And so that model in life will continue the exact same, even though it's clear that it didn't work for your sister. It's clear that it's not working for you, but without the ability to ponder something new, just keep running the pattern.
Exactly. And the fascinating thing was, I was so well situated to play that game within the box of, let's call it, the society that we're in. I knew how to play that game. I was highly trained in it. I knew I was good at it. And I just played it, and it became financially, materially, more and more and more successful. Up to the point about June 2008, I crossed the $1 billion mark in net worth. On paper, I must say. Well, at least that was so I thought, wow, this is the threshold that I was looking for. Until Lehman crashed. So come November, I was minus 50 million. that is when the world really started crashing on me. Because all of a sudden now, I was faced with, my achiever model doesn't seem to work anymore. And then I noticed my friendships, all my relationships seem to have been built on the wrong model as well, because they were fading faster than ice cream in the sun. Once the shining hero is not so shiny anymore. And then the memo of the death of my sister came back very loud and very hard. Basically asked me the one question, Stefan, can you actually feel? Can you actually feel yourself? Can you feel life? Do you actually know what love is? Do you know actually how to love? Starting with yourself. Do you actually love what you do? Do you actually know why you do what you think you have to do? Do you actually know? And then, of course, famous dinner with Tony Robbins that I had, I couldn't answer the simple question, his classic question of all classic questions. So you're successful. Do you know the difference between success and fulfillment? Are you fulfilled? I'm trying to imitate his voice, failing terribly. And I said, isn't that the same? And then he tore me another asshole in front of everyone, as he does. And I said, dude, I don't really know what you do, but sign me up for it. So that was my start of the journey with Tony Robbins, while all that was going down. And that's where I met you. Joined the group that we're still in. And while I was noticing that nothing really works in my life anymore, because all I did was reliving the narrative that I was born in, which was the narrative of my parents, and never created truly my own. So while from a material point of view, I could have kept on playing the game and probably also continue regrow success. But I knew one thing, and that's what hit me hard. I will never be fulfilled. I'll never know how to love. And then I never know how to be a good husband, a father, and could not live to anything that I thought I held. Live up to anything that I thought I held. I think I held precious and true.
So you had the courage to begin again. And what did that, how could you express that? So it sounds like, there were the depths of despair. There was the pain that was the call to journey for our favorite model, the hero's journey. And then what magical helper showed up along the way? How did you begin the process of beginning anew?
You're just pointing on one of the most important things. Who showed up? So interestingly, being in the film business, you know that it's a good script, that any good script follows the one narrative that connects all of mankind, all myths, all religions, all philosophies, and every single good movie, from every Disney movie to The Matrix to Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, which is the hero's journey. And for the first time I understood, that's also my journey. That's also my script. I've just always ignored the calling. I've always ignored the mentors that showed up. I basically sent them home. And I didn't understand that I just wasn't ready. So life kept coming back at me and presenting me the memo of the universe. Said, dude, you're finally ready to read this? I said, okay, got it. And
you met my coach, Mimi Peak, who revolutionized my life in many ways. And she always said, your guardian angel keeps knocking more loudly until you get the lesson, until you get the Brooklyn guardian angel. Like, why'd you hit me with a 2x4? Like, you didn't listen the first time.
Precisely. Um, so I knew I had to make some tough decisions. One of which was that I saw, oh my God, the marriage I was in was another reflection of following a narrative that actually wasn't mine. And we both saw that I married kind of my mother, she married her father, and we saw, oh my God, this is a real codependent relationship. And hence if we want to be good parents, something has to change. So we tried for a few years after that, didn't work out. So I knew, also that I have to rebuild. I made the decision, and interestingly, one of the many smaller mentors that showed up, apart from you and our Badges group, I all of a sudden noticed how many mentors actually continuously show up, and that you could not understand the message, the language that they're speaking, because I wasn't listening with my heart. So for the first time, the outside events forced me to listen to with an open heart, not just with a mind. And that, of course, from the world I was coming from, being a German lawyer, son of a German lawyer, and coming from the super rationalistic view on the world. That was more than an aha moment. That was a continuum of aha moments.
Well, let's play there for a minute, because I think the outside event, if I changed the words a little bit, gave you enough pain that forced you to break down the ego shield and lean in from your heart, right? You had to make the choice with your sister before. You said, hey, I still held the shield and I didn't allow it to enter. So
precisely,
you made a decision that this model is not going to work, and had the courage to say, I'm going to try something new.
Yeah. And but I wouldn't say that I could switch off or shatter the ego. I could see that, the ego holds me back. It's still there. There's got to be something where I can not be ruled by that identity, but now create my own. And that was then my start of my own heroes, or actually it's an eros journey. Eros, in the old Greek word of the enthusiasm, the passion for life. And following that one of the mentors was, Stella, do you actually know? Do you actually see that no, that was a question. I thought I always had many friends that would help me. He said, Stefan, seriously, define friendship to me. And I said, well, and I described the various people. I said, yeah, those are friends on, he called it in the first dimension of human existence, and the second one, I said, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, first dimension are friends for fun, or you have a second dimension, you have friends to reach a goal together, which usually is business. And those are always short-term, because once the fun is over or the goal is reached, those so-called friends are also gone. So describe to me friends in the third dimension, in the dimension of the soul, that truly connect with your heart. Friends in value. And I literally went through my whole Rolodex at the time. And what came out was 2 people. And both of them were on the brink of breaking up with me. So the conversations that, thanks to that conversation with one of those mentors, but with that mentor that described to me the differences in levels of friendship, led to me not only finding and reconnecting with those 2, but also reconnecting with true friends in the fourth dimension that I thought that I had long lost or I never connected with. And that's the friends in spirit. That is the friends that you can not even have matching values, but there's something universal, something divine that truly connects you at a space beyond your soul and your heart, where you enter into a coherent field and you just know. And that is what helped me to completely rebuild my relationship with myself. Because that friendship, that is also what allowed me to define my empathy with myself. And I could see when I have that, I'm creating a coherent field with someone else. When that is a match, say, oh my God, this is the person. I can go into, today we call it flow state. We can call it open the portal. We call it connect with the divine. So ever since and the older I get, the more important it becomes is to understand who are your friends in spirit, who are your friends in soul, in virtue, in values, who are just friends that it's also great to have fun with or to reach a goal with, but you know exactly what your expectations can be, should be, and should not be. So I restarted from there, including my intimate relationships. And that's another thing. I finally learned what it means to be intimate.
And so from that incredible journey, what's impossible for you now? What's the quest you're on now? What can anyone listening to this say, oh, I know someone that can help with that, or I can help with that. That's part of my quest. What would help you make your current impossible task inevitable?
It is the question, all our individual experiences, your incredible story, Curt, the incredible individual stories that we know from our closest friends, most of them life and death situations. And as much as they're all highly individual, including the wisdom that Jordan Hall shared in your last podcast, while it's highly individual, and we all come from different cultures, different settings, different backgrounds, different ages, different socioeconomic, and different belief systems, be it societal, be it religious, be it whatever. But they all share in a certain pattern, in overlapping patterns, I actually even want to call it, although it's not a technical term, but I would call it an operating system of how true humanness shows up and interacts with one another, how true human connection happens, how meaning of life is being created, how feeling fully alive, both individually and in a collective, can be created and recreated. And also how can be the opposite, how it can be destroyed. And when you look at those overlapping patterns, those are universal constants. And they are at the core of every myth that I've been looking into over the last years, every religion, every philosophy, every mystery school. At the end of the day, they just use different myths, different languages, different patterns, different visuals. But at its core, they're all talking about the same. So my big quest is, can we extract that and make it what's known anyway, but bring it back alive in a way that becomes the starting point, not the finishing, point. After we destroyed pretty much everything else, and we go, shit, here we went again, like in the last world wars, or in the 17th centuries, and the religious wars, where we wiped out 50% of the European population to finally come to a moment and say, maybe that's not so good. And as we all feel there's something, we're on the brink of a major crisis happening. And we know in nuclear times, we might not fool around anymore. This might be a bad idea. So do we really need that gigantic crisis? Or have we learned enough in the shared wisdom of humanity that we now are capable of extracting what we all know to be true and bring it back to the world without falling into the traps of ideology, of dogma, of my God beats your God, of righteousness, and basically all the sins that we also all know to be true. So my true quest is, and that is what started with Planet Earth, there was an absolute universal constant built into this that allowed over 1 billion people all over the world to connect, to feel, to be aligned, to be in a coherent field with one another and themselves. What can we do to bring that to the world and allow everyone to access these truths and make it available and execute upon it at their decision, at their fingertips, literally. I believe the time has come for such a paradigm shift. I believe we're ready. Is that going to be easy to do? Holy crap, no. Am I ever going to be mature enough, grown up enough to be able to kick something like this off? I have no idea. Personally, if I look in the mirror, definitely not. But will I, what is the Talmud saying? I will not finish the work, nor am I exempt from it.
And I love your quest for the operating system. It mirrors my own for, can we learn of and tell stories that point to the same ineffable truths that all come from a shadow of each person's unique and different experience, right? From all of us that have gone through those journeys. And how do we now pull all the pieces? Because like, that's to me why I love teams, like all the unique truths that we recall that allow us all to now collectively say, oh, okay, this is the direction we're going, right? You get into the coherent field, whether it's a Broadway show where you now have, 1,100 of your closest friends, mind once in that field never resumes its original dimensions, whether it's planet Earth, whether it's a deep drop in. I have to bring up, because we were just a week ago in the pyramids of Egypt, and the first moment my first trip, but the first moment you gaze up at those pyramids, you're like, wow, just a sense of awe and the sense of what did it take for somebody to build this impossible thing, right? And what did it take for what knowledge was lost, what that allowed them to do the things hundreds and thousands of years ago that would be difficult to do now, right? And so those totems we find along the way of other collectives of humanity that have been fully alive and accomplished and manifested extraordinary quests. Because as you pointed out earlier, the outcome wasn't the pyramid. The outcome wasn't planet Earth. The outcome wasn't any of the journeys. It was the journey itself.
And that experience that we both had in the great chamber of the pyramid, with just a few people being exclusively in one of probably the most perfect room on the planet, with so many physical and mathematical constants being built into it that I can't even count. And something, and that's fascinating, right? So you have a space that allows access to higher levels of, call it consciousness, access to the divine. Allows you to, and that's what we all felt, it allows to get into that highest level of resonance. And it does take an environment and a construct of absolute perfection to be completely imperfect individually, but in coherence with the imperfectness of everyone else. And understanding this is what life is about.
And the entire journey, you're like, couldn't they have built the tunnel a little bit bigger? Like all of the all of the the aspects of the journey are required.
Yeah, my knees definitely told me oh, this is not what we're made for. At the same time, right? We had an amazing aha moment when one of our guides all of a sudden turned out to be a Sufi master, or someone who has deep understanding of the mysteries of Sufism. And what he described with his myth was precisely, again, the parts of the hero's journey and how those are embedded in the Great Pyramid, going through the subterranean chamber. Basically, you enter from the ordinary world, you hear the calling, you go in, and then you go into the subterranean chamber, because it was the womb, to start a rebirthing process. And it's not easy. It's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be difficult. There is no elevator ride whatsoever to enlightenment. Or beyond even enlightenment, just to overcome your current state of ego and change it with another one. It's supposed to be hard. And that's a good representation, and that's what the myth that he was describing. And while going back from the subterranean chamber, we entered the middle chamber, the so-called Queen's Chamber, and had a completely different experience there, which is literally the second or third quadrant of the hero's journey, when you're being initiated, and then the transformation starts. Until the moment that is where you, in a Matrix movie, would be Neo meeting Morpheus and being asked, "So you want to take the red pill or the blue pill?" And then we see how deep down the rabbit hole goes. And we of course all chose the red pill. And then we made it up through the Grand Gallery up to the King's Chamber. And oh boy, the one thing that had no role to play whatsoever was our ego. Nothing mattered what we thought, or what we usually in the ordinary world hold so precious. It was all about experiencing ourselves with one another in deepest resonance. And that is where, in the myths, basically say this is where you get the elixir, and now your job is to bring it back to the world and allow others to be invited to go on their individual journey, observe themselves, what works, what doesn't work, go through it, alter, shatter the ego, let it die on the cross, be resurrected, have that experience, and also bring back the elixir. but definitely read the memo.
And so the quest now is write the memo into an operating model. And so,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Not only an operating model, it's also every operating system has at its core source code. And this is where we all feel the source code of the operating model of how we run our societies. It is either has a flaw or it has come. It's a bit like we're now using apps that need an operating system 16 on an iPhone 16, but we have an iPhone 16, apps 16, and are using an operating system 1.0 and wonder why everything is crashing. We wouldn't wonder if we did the same with our computers or our phones, but somehow we have a belief system that when it comes to humans, no, that's always different because we can talk, right? We can. No, whatever the conversation we have, the interpretation of the words we exchange, the hallucinations we create in our own minds of the words we hear are always dependent on and in reflection of correlating with or causal to whatever our operating system and the source code of that allows it to be. So if our source code is 1.0, the operating system is 5.0, but the complexity is at the app 16 level, nothing's going to work. It's all going to crash. Hence, the big question is, can we just adjust the operating system, or do we even have to go back to the source code? That requires literally a mindset shift with which we see, interpret, and thereby create our worlds together. That, I think, is the ultimate question. And not only from Egypt, but through my personal experience, starting with the death of my sister, the ultimate answer is love. And it's not just love. It's love for life, love for oneself, love for the divine, a belief in infinite wisdom, that life is happening for me and through which life can also happen as me. And definitely that my job is to get out of this default level of consciousness that is just giving me a problem solution mindset. It puts me in just a linear understanding of the world, an alpha and an omega, to be comfortable with the nonlinear, to be totally comfortable with absurdities, to be able to laugh instead of reduce myself to anger, rage. And understand that all of that is the love for life, that feeling of being alive, that aliveness, and spread that. Because that is where the true invitation comes from. And that is basically and then it goes full circles. When we were kids and just wanted to play and with a smile on our faces and invited others to play and we all played, that was true aliveness and that was true love. So we have it all in us. We can go back to that space, and it doesn't mean that we cannot be grown-ups at the same time. It doesn't mean that we have to be separated. And maybe it's really time to not to believe that just because we can fly to the moon and have iPhones and the technology and AI now, that we're in any way smarter than the ancients. there's no new truth that we can discover. It's all been discovered before us. It has to be rediscovered. So what I truly believe in, we're just like the Renaissance in the 15th century allowed people to come back from 1,000 years of superstition and the dark times to rediscover what was known thousands of years before. We're now in a phase of a re-Renaissance. So for the last few hundred years, we were allowed to think, therefore we are, to quote Descartes, to develop an incredible mechanistic and technological understanding of how to basically solve any problem technologically. And now we can, I believe, have both the curiosity and the courage to believe that we can go the ultimate way, based on our understanding that we can get shit done, that we can really build anything, but be truly human with one another. Come from a space of love first, a space of playfulness, and understand why, just as an example, both Apollo with the Greeks and Krishna in Hinduism, they were always depicted with a flute, resembling that playfulness, that music, that state also that we all know we can be in, especially around music and playfulness, and how it makes us feel. In that state, no one hates. In that state, no one wants to bash someone or kill someone. In that state, we just are. We're truly human beings. So the calling, I believe, in my next hero's journey is to invite or create an invitation that can be understood by enough people, and definitely people much more talented than I am in embracing life, to refine that essence, that source code, and make it work for our modern world.
Mission accepted. Thank you. Thank you for your incredible share, your friendship, your aliveness.
Thank you, Curt. I couldn't do it without a friend like you.
To the journey.
To the journey.
Most people don't realize they're wearing a mask, which hides their true power without even knowing it. But the people you work with, your friends, your family, and the world need you to step into the power of your authentic self. Take our free mask assessment to uncover which of the 15 masks you are unconsciously wearing that shapes your life and how you can start to break free. Start your journey at akeypartners.com and step into the power of your authentic self.